can I just check you can hear us through the main one? Because I'm not talking on the screen, on my one. I'm talking, can you hear me? Yep. There we go. Hello everybody and welcome to the opening of our, what will be about a 6-month menopause series as we learn about and help all the women around our organisation, and of course all the other people who are impacted by menopause, which is the family members, other employers, just understanding what's going on for us. Over 80% of women will experience some perimenopause or menopause symptoms, so it is a big issue, and a large number will stop working as a result of this. So we're very proud to present the first of our webinar series, which is Dr. Linda Deer, who is a menopause expert, and Victoria will introduce her now.
So as Erica said, we're really lucky to have Linda kicking off this series for us. Linda's got a very impressive bio that really, I guess, is one of the reasons why we've asked her to be the first person on this session for us. But one thing we just did want to share was that Linda actually started out as a rhythmic gymnast and won bronze at the Commonwealth Games. So I think that's incredibly impressive. But after a lot of medical training, she is now a specialist general practitioner and a fellow of the Royal New Zealand College of General Practitioners. And most importantly for this talk, Linda is a NAM certified menopause practitioner. So what that means is that she's certified by the Northern Menopause Society, and they're regarded as a leading authority on menopause. Over to you, Linda.
Lovely. Thank you, guys. So hopefully you can see my screen now with the presentation I'm going to do today, all about my favourite topic in the whole world, which is menopause and also perimenopause. And we'll talk about what those two words mean in a bit. So an intro's already been done, but yes, this is me, and I'm a doctor. But before I became a doctor, I did some other stuff that was quite useful. So I studied psychology, and I was a fitness trainer and a yoga teacher for a while. And now I have morphed myself into be a menopause doctor and run a private clinic seeing women from all over New Zealand about their perimenopause and menopause. And I've also started to do more things like this, where I go into workplaces and organisations to talk about what we all should know about menopause and perimenopause. So let's talk about what menopause is and what menopause isn't. And we're going to get on to more formal definitions in a bit. But for me, these are the things I think matter about menopause. It is inevitable. So all women at some point in some way are going to go through this phase of life. And there's a lot of women on this planet. So projections say by 2030, our population of the world, there'll be 1.2 billion of us in the menopausal and postmenopausal phase. And that actually doesn't include the perimenopausal phase. So there's a lot of us facing this life phase. We should know what to expect. But we often don't. So it's very under-recognised. And a lot of the time it's missed, or it's labelled as something else, or it's dismissed because it's seen as something that's normal and no big deal. But it can be a big deal for some women. And because we're missing it a lot, we are not helping women as much as they often need. So it is undertreated or under-supported. And a lot of women just struggle on with no help or support, when actually there's a lot of things out there that can help. What is it not? It is not a disease. It is a normal part of life. So I don't think we should start over-medicalising menopause, but we've probably been under-medicalising it for a long time. It's also important to say that it is not the same for everyone. So menopause can happen at different ages, from different causes, and have very different symptoms. So there's no one size fits all for this. You may have a totally different version to your mum or your best friend or someone you work with. And it's also important to say it is not always a natural event. We can do it to women. So doctors and surgeons, we can put women into menopause very suddenly, either by removing both their ovaries or by giving them treatments that damage their ovaries. And that is the most dramatic version of menopause a woman can go through, because it is overnight. It is hormones there 1 minute and not there the next. And that actually is a very unique type of menopause that really needs even more support. And it's not always nice, menopause. It is to some women. Some women don't notice a bloody thing, right? So there'll be women out there thinking, why all this fuss about menopause? Why have they got this doctor in talking about it? Look, there are women who breeze through it, but there are women who don't, and there's everything in between. So we have to appreciate that for some women, this is a hard time. And it's not just about women, right? We kind of pull everybody else on this journey with us. So men should understand a little bit about this, because it is going to impact them. They are going to know a woman, they are going to love a woman, they're going to live with a woman, they're going to work with a woman. So we do need to make this something that everybody knows about. So what does it really mean, the formal definition? Well, it is the end of a woman's fertility. We don't make babies forever. And the word menopause literally translates as the last ever period. Meno coming from the Latin for monthly, menstrual, and pause meaning stop. So the word menopause is actually a very small word, even though we use it to describe the whole thing. It is just talking about that final period. More specifically, what's going on in that woman's body is her ovaries retire. Okay, so they stop doing what they used to do. And one of the things they did was make periods happen. And they stop because they stop making eggs, and they also stop making hormones, which is what causes all the trouble. So how do we get here? Well, this is what ovaries go through in a woman's lifespan. The ovaries wake up at puberty. That's when a woman has her first ever period. Average age of that is around 13, something like that. And then she kicks off her cycles, and that's her reproductive years. Hopefully she has regular cycles that are not too painful, not too heavy. But again, nature can dish out all kinds of variations on that. She might have some pregnancies during that time, she might not. But at some point in a woman's life, usually in the 40s, the ovaries start to get a bit tired and they get a bit erratic, like we do. And that is what perimenopause is all about. So there's this little phase there, perimenopause, which is the word we really need to learn about and recognise. And then eventually the periods fully stop. She has her last ever period, and that is her menopause moment. And then everything else after that is called postmenopause, which can be a good 30 or 40 years of that woman's life, depending on the age she has her final period. We live a lot longer than we ever used to. So we've got a lot of life to live after our fertility. Let's home in then on what this perimenopause is all about, and I'm going to play a video that I think is a wonderful way to explain it.
Now there's just one more store I'm not allowed to go into.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Mm.
Hey, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm feeling like just a bit hot. Is it hot in here?
No, I'm perfect.
Really? In that turtleneck?
I'm actually a little chilly.
Oh, maybe I'm coming down with something. Just
Maybe it's perimenopause.
you think?
I don't know. Is it?
I don't know. Is it? No.
No.
I still wear a jean jacket. I still drink out of a mason jar.
You're hot for no reason, so is it?
Is it? No.
Maybe? Fuck. Have you read this?
I don't know. I can't remember.
You can't remember the whole book. How can you not remember reading the book? Unless it's perimenopause. Is it? No. I mean, it can't be.
No, it can't be. Is it? I don't know. I still get acne. I have a snowboard.
It can't be.
No.
No way.
No, it's not.
Is it?
Hey,
Wait.
oh, those are super cute sunglasses.
Are they?
Yeah, they are real.
Please. Wow, I don't even know why I did that.
Sorry. The perimenopause.
No. Is it?
Is it perimenopause? I don't know. Do you have more underarm hair? My armpit hair got a lot thicker. Was that on my chin?
God. Perimenopause?
I don't know.
Well, you should know. You're my mother.
I think it is.
It is?
Is it?
I'm the baby of the family, though.
You are?
Am I? Honey,
Have you talked to a doctor?
I can't sleep. I'm hot all the time. My moods are up and down. I like burst into tears for absolutely no reason. Like, is it perimenopause?
Oh, I don't know. Isn't?
What do you mean? You're my doctor. Like,
Oh, it could be. There's not really much research. I mean, who really cares, right? But the one thing we do know is that it can last up to 10 years
10 years?
or more,
What?
or less. I don't know what else to tell you.
I don't know. How about like maybe you just tell me what's going on with my body? Like anything? Is that too unreasonable a request?
Yes, it is. Definitely.
So I love that because it sums it up for me. That is, if you want to define perimenopause, there it is. Basically, we all feel too young for it, I think is the sentence to say. It is not the same thing as menopause, even though it's got the word in it. So this perimenopause bit is the mysterious bit. And is it, isn't it? Oh, I don't know. It doesn't sound good. So a woman is still having her periods in perimenopause, and they may be completely regular. You may get no clues from your womb at all. So you are still fertile as well. So we have to think about contraception in perimenopause. That sometimes gets forgotten about. Usually it's going to kick off in a woman's 40s, but sometimes it can be earlier than that. It can be in her late 30s. And look, when you think about fertility, you know, the eggs that an ovary is making, we know that that starts to decline from about the age of 35. So it's not that surprising that hormone production is also going to start changing potentially from about that mid-30s onwards. How long does peri last? Nobody really knows. It varies. As that doctor so lovingly said, could be 10 years, love. You know, we don't know. It can sometimes drag on for some women. But what's going on in the background is that hormone levels, particularly the estrogen, is not as regular as it used to be. It's fluctuating, and that can really knock women around. But because things are such a mess in terms of the hormone production, there's no way to measure that. So there's no test for perimenopause. It's basically what we call in medicine a clinical diagnosis, which means you should use your ears and just listen to what the woman's telling you. And that's how you decide if that's what's going on. Whereas when we look at menopause, by definition, she's not having periods anymore. But you only know that when she's gone a whole year without a period, because in perimenopause, periods can start to spread out. And so you might go 6 months without one. You have to have the magical 1 whole year of no periods before we say, well, that was your menopause moment. The average age that happens for women is about 51. But it's normal for nature to stop our periods from any age between 45 to 55. Between 40 and 45, if you have your last period there, we call that early menopause, but we don't worry too much about that. But if you stop your periods fully before you get to the age of 40, that is a bit different. That is a bit young to be without those hormones. Sometimes we do that to women. So when they have surgical menopause, we remove their ovaries, or induced menopause from medical treatments. That's different. And we do tend to always offer hormones to women who go through a very early menopause because their bodies need those hormones still. But after menopause, your levels of hormone are all low. It's not this fluctuating mess anymore. So you can measure that if you need to. But really, we wait for women's wombs to tell us when she's gone through menopause, which is tricky if she doesn't have a womb. So women who've had a hysterectomy, they don't know when they've gone into menopause, and neither do we. So that's when doing tests can sometimes help us. You can also use tests if a woman's got a Mirena coil in, or she's on a contraception that's stopping her periods artificially. Sometimes you can do those tests, sometimes you can't. So menopause is all about ovaries. That's what this is all about. And in medicine, we call ovaries gonads. They are women's gonads. Men's gonads are testicles, testes. Women have gonads too. They are called ovaries. They're tucked up in our bodies. They're very special and important. and they make two things. They make eggs and they make hormones. And they make 3 types of hormone: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And ovaries are busy little multitaskers. They put their hand up for pretty much every job going in the female body, it seems. They probably should have just stuck with fertility. That's a massive job. But they don't just do that. They do lots of other things. The hormones they make go all over the place, which is why menopause can be so full of symptoms, because you don't just lose fertility. You can have a lot of other things changing as well. So let's look at how busy the hormones that ovaries make are. Estrogen is busy. There are receptors for this hormone pretty much all over women's bodies and brains. It's hard to find a cell without one. So estrogen doesn't just help us make babies and turn us into women. It helps our bones, it helps our muscles, it helps our brains, helps our guts, helps our immune system. Even our nerve cells have estrogen receptors on. So estrogen is going around talking to all these places, keeping them all in check. Progesterone's pretty busy as well. She's more known as the pregnancy hormone in medicine because she really shines then, and she's really important making periods happen every month. So most of her work is focused in the womb for progesterone, but in some women she seems to have effects elsewhere as well. So there are receptors for progesterone in the brain, in the bones. So it probably has more uses than medicine tends to give her credit for. And testosterone, a hormone we tend to think of is just in men. Yes, it's in men in high amounts, but it's also in women's bodies and brains as well. We actually make more testosterone than estrogen throughout our reproductive years. A lot of that gets converted to estrogen, but a lot of it doesn't. So this is a hormone for women as well as men. It's a human hormone. It's not just a male hormone. And as you can see here, it's busy. It's going all over the place, doing lots of jobs for us. So that is why when the levels of these hormones fluctuate, which is what starts to happen in perimenopause, women can get all kinds of signals that something is different from any or all of those cells that are listening to those hormones. So women can get some quite bizarre things happen to them in perimenopause and in menopause, and nobody's really looking at the ovaries and blaming them for it. But you can get allergies coming on because of the effects on the immune system. You can get numbness and tingling because of the effects on the nervous system. So there is so many possible symptoms that women can get, which is part of the reason it's hard to pin it down as being due to hormones, or is it due to something else? I've left 2 symptoms off here that are like the most popular or the most well-known menopause symptoms, and when I'm live with people I get people to put their hand up, but because I'm just sat at home talking to you all, I can't do that. But basically one of the ones I've left off here is this one, because when people hear the word menopause, the next thing that pops into people's head is usually hot flushes. It's the most famous symptom out there, and lots of women do get hot flushes or night sweats, and the collective term is vasomotor symptoms. That's the posh name for it. And that's because it's not just about a heat problem. Often it can have other things like palpitations or a feeling of dread or a dizziness or feeling sick. It can be a real surge of adrenaline kind of feeling. But 20% of women, for 20%, their thermostat's fine. They don't have any hot flushes, any night sweats. It's not essential. But most people are waiting for that first hot flush to happen before they even mention the word menopause or perimenopause. And we don't have to wait for that to happen. You can have lots of other symptoms going on and not have any hot flushes. The other thing everyone's kind of focused on is, well, what are your periods doing? And look, it's true, we should ask about periods and check what's going on. But for a lot of women, your periods may give you no clues at all. As I said earlier, in perimenopause, you can still have very nice regular cycles. Nothing's changed, nothing to see here. But that doesn't mean you're not in perimenopause, because you may be it may be your brain that has noticed the changing estrogen levels and you've got severe fatigue or you've got severe mood changes. On the flip side, in perimenopause, your periods can go completely bonkers as well. So for some women, their wombs really do listen and don't like this change in signal, and they get very heavy periods, or they get prolonged ones that go on for months, or they have big gaps and then suddenly get one. You can get more PMS as well. Worsening PMS can be an early sign of perimenopause, or new PMS that you never used to get. So periods can change, or they can decide to just stay exactly the same. So because there's all these different symptoms, I mean, you could see why it can be hard to pin it down, and why we've got to be careful we don't start blaming hormones for everything either. You know, there's lots of different things that can be going on in a woman's life around the time when peri and menopause come along, and women can have more than one thing going on. So you do have to make sure there's nothing else happening, there's nothing else to explain the symptoms, there's not more than one thing that that woman needs to look at. All of these things matter and should be thought about. So do you need a hormone test? There's a lot of them out there. We like tests as doctors, they're great. Makes life so much easier. Look how happy he is with that urine. You know, it's great when we could just do a test and say, you've got this, madam. But hormones, especially in perimenopause, as I said, you can't measure amiss, which is basically what you're trying to measure if you do hormone tests in perimenopause. But there's all this stuff out there. It's very rarely a blood test, because blood tests are a bit more problematic, whereas urine and saliva is quite easy to get from people. So a lot of these things you can buy or are recommended, you know, are saying they're going to give you this answer, they're going to tell you your profile, they're going to give you all these numbers, so you know where you're at and what's going on in your body. But as I said, most of the women who get these tests are actually in perimenopause, and there is no test for that, because the hormone levels are all over the place and you're just getting a snapshot. By the time you've done the test and walked out of the room, it's already changed. And whatever's floating around in your blood or your urine or your spit is not where the action is at. Those hormones have got to talk to a cell. They've got to get on a receptor, tell the cell to do something. We can't measure receptors. We'll maybe never be able to. And receptors can be on and off. So women will vary in how many receptors they have, how on or off they are. And that's why it's such a minefield, this whole hormone landscape in a woman's body. So let's go on now and talk a bit about, what does this phase of life mean for women's health? Because things change around menopause, and we've known this for a long time. So when you plot on a graph, as this graph is here, cardiovascular disease risk, so here's one important part of health, so heart disease, strokes, things like that. When you look at men versus women, women are smug. You know, we can be smug for a while. We're doing better than men. Where, you know, we have less heart attacks, we have less strokes. But then look what happens literally at the age of menopause, pretty much bang on 50. Our risks become the same, and then actually it gets a bit worse for women after that. So from a heart disease point of view, outcomes are worse for women post-menopause than men of similar age. So something is changing there, and it's the ovaries going that is what changes. So we've always known that particularly estrogen is doing something good for women's hearts and their general health. And after menopause, that changes. So we do see increased risks of things like blood pressure, high blood pressure, heart disease. Often a woman's cholesterol blood test starts to change, even if she's not eating any differently or she's not exercising any differently. You see these lipids just going a bit off. And the other thing that's important to say, which a lot of people don't know, is that women who have really bad night sweats or hot flushes, that having more severe ones is linked to a greater risk of cardiovascular disease. So these symptoms are not just minor symptoms, they're actually not necessarily very good for us to have them for too long a time. And we do need to think about heart disease in women, although it's often not the thing that scares women the most. Cancers and breast cancer particularly is often what women are more frightened of, but actually heart disease is the #1 killer of women, and that's at all decades of life. Our bones, they miss our ovaries, especially the estrogen. So we do see bone density going down after menopause, and we see increased risk of fractures and full-on osteoporosis, the risk of that going up. And our hormones stick their nose into our metabolism as well. They are running that show quite a lot, especially estrogen. I mean, she is just, going around running everything, it seems. So there are metabolic changes, and we see that in our body composition. So after menopause and around peri, there's that horrible thing that changes where you think, why is my middle so much bigger than it used to be? So you start to gain weight more easily. It gets harder to lose weight. You also lose muscle. You actually go into a muscle losing state, and our blood sugar control can go a bit off as well. So women can go in for their regular health check, and suddenly their diabetes blood test, they're saying, I've got pre-diabetes suddenly. And we think it's all to do with these hormone changes. So what are we going to do about all this? I'm painting a terrible picture here about how, we're just falling apart. Well, we're not, but what it means is that one of the first things women need to do at this phase is we need to look after ourselves. Our bodies do struggle a bit without the ovaries helping us out. So we need to do everything else we can do to stay healthy, to stay happy. And I am going to talk about HRT, but I'm going to say this first. It doesn't stand for healthy lifestyle replacement therapy. So we're going to talk about that first, because nothing can replace looking after our bodies properly, which we should do at every age, really. But often getting to perimenopause, it can be quite motivating to make some changes, to start really listening to what our bodies want. So all of this stuff really matters. What we eat, what we smoke, what we drink, how we think, how we move, how we rest. We need to really look at all these basics and do the best we can for our bodies. So I'll go through a bit of these briefly. I mean, this is a huge talk on its own. What do you eat in perimenopause and menopause? Well, there is no magical diet yet. I'm sure someone will make a lot of money if they come up with that one. But it's all the general rules that really apply to people, whatever age, gender, stage they're in. So the Mediterranean diet's got the most research of being the thing most human bodies like. And it's basically saying, don't eat processed foods, eat actual real foods that haven't been fiddled with, a good variety of foods, lots of vegetables. Try and get some fish in your diet. We often don't eat enough fish, but omega-3 is really important. So oily fish is good for that. And fibre, that's the other thing we need to get enough of, because our gut bacteria get a bit pissed off around this phase as well. So they miss the hormones. Estrogen and progesterone plays a lot of roles in our gut and the microbiome. So our fibre and vegetables, all the stuff those gut bugs love, we need to be doing that. And protein, a lot of women don't eat enough protein. And because our muscle mass starts to go down, it's even more important to do that. And all the false friends that we've got, like wine and high heels. But back to diet, there's some stuff that we can't get away with like we used to, I suppose is a good way of saying. Our body is very unforgiving suddenly, which seems a bit mean, but she's just trying to talk to us and say, please look after me. So there's some things that maybe we have to break up with. And then how should we be exercising? Well, we need to do some strong stuff. We need to start building muscle, and women are often not as comfortable with muscle training as men are, but we've got to get more comfortable with doing it. And we've got to lift and push weights that are actually quite heavy, because muscles are lazy. They don't listen unless you push them. They actually don't grow unless you tear them. So you do often need to get a bit of guidance on how to do muscle training properly. So we need to do some strong stuff. We still need to do the sweaty stuff, which most women are pretty good at. The cardio, anything ending in ing is usually cardio, running and jogging and swimming. And we need to do some stretchy stuff and some balance stuff. So yoga and Pilates, Tai Chi, things like that are good as well. And the other muscles I will just quickly mention are the ones you can't see. So we must remember our pelvic floor muscles. Those muscles we really need to start training from now, so we will not regret it in later years. And then there's a whole psychological side of this phase of life, because it can have a lot of psychological symptoms. We can lose our confidence, we can start getting anxiety, we can start getting irritability, and we can feel a bit like a middle-aged teenager, I think, sometimes, where your mood swings are just, you know, a bit out of control. So anything that is going to be kind to our mind is a good idea as well, whatever that looks like for you. It's a time to make the time to do some stuff that just makes you feel calm and feel good. And that might mean saying no a bit more. Now, what about actual treatment? So lifestyle is vital, but some women, even if they're ticking all the lifestyle boxes, they are still struggling with symptoms, and there are things out there that can help. And for me, I call it the menopause buffet, where a woman should have every option out there brought to her on a table to say, what do you fancy trying? Here's everything out there, the medical stuff, the non-medical stuff. You know, I think there does need to be this choice for women. And a lot of this stuff you can mix and match. There's very few things that interact with each other. So supplements often don't really treat symptoms, but they are just sometimes good for general health, and become more important after menopause, especially if you're not getting some of this stuff through your diet. If you don't eat any dairy, you know, your poor bones are not going to like that. So calcium, considering that, or buying plant milk that's got some calcium added, things like that. I think probiotics and prebiotics are a good idea. We still don't know the precise perfect ones. One day we will, but I don't think there's any harm in any of these. And then some women find relief from their hot flushes with black cohosh, a herbal remedy. There is a bit of evidence for that. And ashwagandha is another herbal remedy that some women do find very helpful for mood and calming effects. St. John's wort, another one I didn't write on here, but these are all options women are allowed to try if they want to. And then there's also some non-hormonal medications that weren't designed for menopause, but can be quite helpful. So antidepressants, which I think we need to rename into anti a lot of things, because we don't just give them for depression. They can help with hot flushes. They can help with sleep. They can help with pain. And then there's other medications that, like I say, not designed for menopause, but can help with a lot of the things menopause can bring. And so these are all things women can choose from as well. And then we've got HRT, or as we're supposed to call it now, MHT. So HRT stands for hormone replacement therapy. MHT stands for menopausal hormone therapy. Everybody still calls it HRT, really. What does that mean? Well, it is trying to mimic ovaries, essentially, particularly the estrogen. But that's what we're trying to do. And we want to imitate nature because she tends to know what she's doing. So that's what the term body identical or bioidentical means. It means the hormone in the product has exactly the same molecular structure as the hormones we make in our body. So our body is going to recognize it. So that's the best way to give women hormones. The other best way to give women hormones is to avoid the gut. It's best not to eat them, basically. And especially with the estrogen, because if you give estrogen through a woman's skin, there is no clot risk that way. So oral estrogen does have a small clot risk, just like the pill does. But the beauty about the patches, estrogen patches, is we can get rid of that problem. And it imitates how nature does it by releasing it directly into the bloodstream. So we've got lots of good products now out there. We've got progesterone that's body identical, we've got estrogen that's body identical, and we've even got testosterone that's body identical. But that's not licensed or funded here yet, but the top two are. The problem with HRT was this big study 20 years ago. This is why everybody, as soon as they hear HRT, the next thing in their brain is breast cancer. And it's because of this huge study that cost $1 billion in America, where they looked at the effects of HRT on 3 different groups of women. They looked at women who didn't take any HRT. They looked at women who took combined HRT, which means estrogen and progesterone together. And they looked at women who didn't have a womb, who'd had a hysterectomy, and they could take estrogen only HRT, because you can just take estrogen if you've had a hysterectomy. And they did this study and came out and said, we found an increased risk of breast cancer. And basically everybody stopped prescribing HRT and women stopped taking it. That was in 2002, they came out with that announcement. But since then, we've looked at that data more, and really the risk that they found was extremely small to start with, but they also found lots of good news about HRT that they didn't tell anybody. And one of the big criticisms of this study is a lot of the women were a lot older, whereas we normally give HRT to women under 60. So when you just look at the data for the women under 60, and to be honest, even if you keep the women over 60 in the data, it's still not that bad. But let's take them out for now and just look at the age we normally give HRT to. Here's what they found for the women who took both hormones. This is women under 60 who were on both hormones because they had a womb. And this is how many cases of bad news or cases of good news in blue that they found for every 10,000 women. So the increased breast cancer risk from HRT came out as an extra 6 cases out of 10,000 women, which is considered a very low risk. So that's lower, much lower than the risk of breast cancer from being overweight or from drinking 2 or more units of alcohol a day. And basically, when you look at this graph, most of those red blobs, the bad blobs, if we could go back in time, give these women patches instead of pills because they were given oral estrogen because it's all they had then we'd get rid of all the clotty stuff. So the DVT, the PE, the heart disease has been shown now to be the other way. So more recent data has shown that when you start HRT under 60, it reduces heart disease risk. And actually, even this study that was a terrible advert for HRT, even they found that the women on HRT were less likely to die than the women not on HRT. And that's death from all causes, including breast cancer. The other big thing they didn't shout about was the diabetes reduction, because as I said, estrogen plays a role in metabolic health. So it reduced the risk of diabetes, and lots more research has proven that as well since. But probably the saddest thing was how bad estrogen came out of this study. When you look at the estrogen on its own without any progesterone there, this is how good it did. So this is the study 20 years ago that made everybody not want to touch HRT. They actually found that taking estrogen alone reduced the risk of breast cancer. It basically reduced everything except carrying a small risk of clots because they gave these women tablets of estrogen. So that wasn't news. These red findings were not new. We already knew that. There is a small risk of clots from oral estrogen. But again, if we could go back and put patches on these women instead of giving them pills, we're pretty sure there'd be no red blobs at all. This is another good graph from the British Menopause Society to try and put the breast cancer risk into perspective, to say HRT is not a high risk of breast cancer. And when you combine a lot of the data, it actually comes out about the same kind of risk as the combined contraceptive pill. So the contraceptive pill has a small breast cancer risk. We don't think it's bad enough that we should stop giving it to women because it has way more benefits, such as reducing ovarian cancer risk. But as you can see, HRT, combined HRT with some progesterone in it, is not a big risk for breast cancer. And actually estrogen on its own reduces the risk of breast cancer. So final thoughts before we jump into the Q&A. I just want to say everyone is different. Talking to other women is helpful, but sometimes it depends who you talk to. And look, their version of this might be completely different. All right, there's no right answers or wrong answers. So don't compare yourself too much. And I don't think we need to suffer through this in silence anymore. We don't get a prize for that. And often talking about it can be helpful. And if you need extra support, then it's out there. And one of those things is HRT, and it is not this dangerous medication we've all been led to believe. You can learn so much now about this life phase. You can spend the rest of your life listening to menopause podcasts. There's heaps of them out there. Sometimes that becomes a bit too much. I think we've gone from too little information, and sometimes now I think we're overwhelmed by it, but it is good that everyone's talking about it. And then the final thought is just to be nice to yourself, whatever version of menopause and perimenopause you're being dealt. We need to look after ourselves and be nice to ourselves. And then there's just a few links at the end here. The top one's my website, and then there's some other ones that I've got useful info on too. And that's me done.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Linda, for all of that information. People are being a bit shy on the Q&A at the moment, but any questions, pass them through. I can always ask on behalf of a friend. One question I have though, when you're trying a new treatment, how long do you think you need to give it before you consider adjusting it?
I say minimum 6 weeks, always. But you know, sometimes it can take 3 months for our system and our body to tell us what it really thinks about something. But by 6 weeks, you should have a fair idea. The only one I'd say doesn't fit with that is testosterone treatment. That usually takes a lot longer than 6 weeks to show its effects. But pretty much everything else on the menopause buffet, I'd give it 6 weeks, whether that's a supplement or a medication or a new hobby, whatever you're trying, I'd give everything at least 6 weeks.
What would you use testosterone for as opposed to your other two?
So the main reason testosterone is prescribed, or the only reason we're officially supposed to give it to women, is to help with the low libido of perimenopause and menopause, of which that is a really common symptom. But there are often other things that women report get improved with testosterone: mood, energy, sleep, musculoskeletal symptoms. We haven't proven it in RCTs yet, and that's all trying to happen at the moment. So until that's proven with data, we can't say that's a reason to give it. The only proven indication is it does help with low libido, and there's RCTs and meta-analysis to say yes, it does.
So Linda, how long can you stay on hormone replacement therapy?
So what we should be telling women now is there is no time limit on how long a woman can take HRT for. So NAMS, the North American Menopause Society, who've renamed themselves the Menopause Society, they do a statement every 4 years, and they did one last year and one of the conclusions was there's no need to just randomly stop HRT because she's over 60 or she's 65 or because she's been on it 10 years. These are all sort of stuck in doctors' heads as some sort of time limit, and we do need to get rid of them because the evidence doesn't support that. It doesn't seem to become too risky for women to continue it later on. Some women's menopause symptoms go on for a long bloody time. Often the doses needed can be less as women get through the decades, and we always want to go with the safest option if possible, through the skin, body identical. But no, a lot of women do take it for quite a few years, and we don't think there's a need to be panicking her off it.
What advice would you give to us to make our workplaces sort of a great workplace for someone suffering perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms? What can we do?
It seems to be the worst thing about this phase is the stigma and the silence about it. So all the surveys and research that have been done, including some here in New Zealand, one of them I did, another one the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research did, and it really does show that stigma is what makes things worse. So talking about it is the best thing to start with, things like this, making it not a dirty word, so it doesn't feel like this lonely place that women are stuck in. So that's kind of step one. And yet that as many people as possible having a vague idea what menopause looks like and what it means, not just the women going through it, but the men and the younger people who aren't there yet. You know, so everybody has an idea of what it can look like. is helpful. And look, workplaces can make some little tweaks, some little adjustments temporarily if women's symptoms are causing a lot of problems. And it can be simple stuff. Yes, temperature control can matter hugely if she's got terrible hot flushes. Being flexible with working times can help if she's having a lot of insomnia and sleepless nights. So just that kind of human-friendly workplace stuff that kind of applies for everybody. But yeah, sometimes when a woman's in this phase, if she's having trouble, she might need a bit more support around her just for that time.
We've got a question here. Are there any issues to be aware of if you're on antidepressants during that perimenopause and menopause phase in relation to those depressive symptoms and hormone therapy?
So antidepressants and HRT are best friends, so they can hang around together. There's no interaction there. Antidepressants can be helpful with flushes and mood changes and sleep. Often, though, they can make libido even worse. That's probably one of the biggest problems with them. And you're not getting to the root cause, if you like. You know, you're not doing ovary jobs by giving someone antidepressants. You will not get the benefits of the heart benefits, the bone benefits, and we think possibly brain benefits if HRT is started in perimenopause. There's emerging research saying it might reduce Alzheimer's. So antidepressants certainly should be on the buffet table for women to choose from. If you're already on one, you can add HRT on top of an antidepressant, or you can wean off the antidepressant, see if the HRT is actually going to be more beneficial for you. But all of these things on the buffet table can be taken together as well. You can have a massive plate full of everything. And you can go back whenever you want and change your mind. But probably the main problem with antidepressants that a lot of women maybe don't realise is how they can have these negative effects on an already low libido. And that is not always very welcome.
So you touched on that research, Linda, and I think from personal experience, there are still a lot of doctors out there who don't really understand menopause. And one of the questions we've got here is how is that being addressed, both with doctors in training and with GPs out in practice?
I think there's a push, there's a hunger for it to get better. Like everything in life, it's always a bit slow, isn't it? And GPs are under the pump. Generally, not just from menopause, but from everything. And we are in a bit of a crisis mode with GPs. A lot of them are going to Australia, basically, or just doing something else. So although it's a really good idea to try and help train them, bring more awareness and education, there's also that fear of burdening a already struggling workforce. But there's no doubt it needs to be bread and butter part of GP training and in med school, improving the training of it there, because it has been a bit just forgotten about and brushed over. But it is such a big phase in a woman's life, and it's kind of finally everybody's starting to look at it and go, oh, this is quite big. So it is important, because it also can cost a lot of time and money when women go and see all these different ologists who are focusing on one bit of her, and nobody's mentioning hormones. So it would be ultimately better to train more doctors to recognise this, because it gives women answers quicker, and it can often give her solutions quicker.
And to add that for the people watching, one component of the program we're doing is to produce a checklist for you so that you can actually print that off and complete it and take that to your GP to very much shape the conversation you want to have as well.
I've got a bit on my website of talking to your GP as well. So in the resources bit, where it says, here's some tips on how to get the most out of your GP appointment. Here's what you need to know before you go. Book a double appointment if you can, please. Menopause in 15 minutes is pretty impossible. So booking a double, and yeah, I've got a little checklist on there of the kind of symptoms that are probably going to spark the GP's brain to think about ovaries as to what might be going on.
We have another question about the sticky patches, and are there any other alternatives to that?
Yes, there's another way to put estrogen through the skin, and that's in a gel. So there's two gels, there's Sandrina gel and Estrogel. Neither of those are licensed here yet in New Zealand, nor funded, but they can be prescribed. But it depends on whether the doctor is confident with how to dose them, how to prescribe them. They're not on what's called the New Zealand formulary, which is the kind of drug bible that all the doctors in New Zealand look at to see what MedSafe have approved. So they're in the shadows, and they shouldn't be. Estrogen gels are just as good as patches in terms of just as safe, just as effective. And some women prefer them because you haven't got a little sticker stuck on your belly. You can just put your gel on once a day. And the whole twice a week regime with patches, is a bit annoying. Whereas gels are once daily, which is often easier to remember. Maybe that might give a more steady supply of estrogen level as well. No one's done a sort of head to head between gels and patches, and maybe they should, because actually there might be some ways gels are a bit better. And obviously the other problem with patches is you can't always get them. So that's not good. And some women get allergic reactions from the glue and the sticky stuff. So there's lots of reasons why gels can be helpful. So that is another option other than having to resort to tablets. But saying that, tablets are not the be all and end all, as you can see from that data from 20 years ago. Even estrogen tablets weren't that bad. So that's another option for some women who don't get on with patches or gels, because some women can't absorb through their skin very well. So we still need the tablets as an option for some women.
Just going back to one of your comments you mentioned really, which is about the costs of it. And in fact, HRT is funded, and I did used to get concerned about a number of patients coming to see me who would talk about the number of over-the-counter preparations people would purchase at great expense because it was felt to be safer. My feeling is it was better to know what you were getting and get it for free than to take these over-the-counter preparations, which are at quite a great expense. So you have comments on that?
What you've also got here is the big compounded hormones industry, which is really making a lot of money out of women for products that don't get full MedSafe regulation. Even though they are drugs, they are hormones, they have all the same small risks that ours do. So, but they do promote themselves as being safer and more natural, even though they are no more safe or more natural than our ones. So you've got the compound pharmacy sort of side of things. And then you've just got the herbal supplement industry side of things, which they're not medications, but yeah, they don't have as much research behind them. We can't be sure what's in them all the time. Do I think they're dangerous? Probably not, but I do see women spend a lot of money on a lot of stuff. The thing that annoys me the most is all the testing they get women to do, because that's just another way to make more money. And they often tell women, oh, well, we're going to tailor it and get it right to your recipe, and then we'll have to monitor you. You have to do it again in 3 months to check. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't need a test to take HRT. You don't need a test to take a supplement. Your body will tell you if it likes it or not. So yeah, I give that message out a lot to the women I talk to. Let your body tell you what it likes, because it will tell you.
I think that's really helpful and reassuring. And as a breast cancer surgeon, I'm wearing patch right now. Well, I think that's the end of our Q&As, and we are extremely grateful, Linda. That was really, really fabulous. Lots of interesting information. And of course, this is all recorded so that people can come back and look at that again. We will spend the next little while updating you with some messages on links, resources, etc., and continue on through our Menopause Workplace program with the support of Linda as well. Anything else to say?
No, just a huge thanks, Linda. Personally, and I know so many people listening to this, whether they're going through menopause or whether they're living with someone or working with someone who's having symptoms, it's just been so helpful.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And is it too late to learn rhythmic gymnastics?
Yeah.
Never too late to twirl a ribbon.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Ka kite anō, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.